Today I've got something very special. It's obviously super micro, right? It's actually from Micro Center. This is something that you can pick up if you have a Micro Center in your area. It's a tiny server. It's a teeny tiny server. It's gonna be so cute. I'm really excited about this. This is gonna kick off some more projects for the ultimate home server. But make no mistake, this server is powerful enough for use in your office as well. Let's tear into this. Listen, I go nuts for servers. If you're building a home server, don't feel like you have to spend a lot of money. This server is kind of a crossover point between high-end NAS and actual server. In that this is a server, it has a Xeon processor, but it actually will cost less than some NASs. You ready for the big reveal? Voila! Viola. It's got an installation kit for a CD-ROM, a slimline CD-ROM. All manner of screws. Drive labels, 0 through 4. 5 drives, RAID 5. We can do RAID 5 or RAID 6. Lovely packet of desiccant. And 4 thumb screws. 4 thumb screws. Right in the back. And look at that. Server class motherboard. Yes, onboard IPMI. And also assembled in USA. America. No, there's no supply chain problems. There never has been. America. Gosh. Yeah. Anatomy of an internal server. Here, 2.5-inch SSD or slimline CD-ROM. You can see that. Notebook style CD-ROM if you prefer that terminology. We have a lockable front, which is of course unlocked, and of course 4 hot swap bays. Oh, it's nice. Now in the base configuration, it comes with a 2TB Exos drive, but listen, if you're buying this at Micro Center, this is kind of the base model, you're gonna DIY this into something just magical. Now it might not look like it, or you might not realize it, but this is fully standard as far as form factors go. Our power supply, it's a 366 watt, but this is a standard small form factor power supply. If this power supply dies, you're going to be able to get a replacement. The drive bays, the rear interface for this is a standard SATA interface. If this enclosure completely dies, you can take your drives and put them in something else and be ready to go. The motherboard, it's a standard ITX motherboard. Look, we have a standard ATX motherboard power connector. If the power supply dies and you can't get a small form factor power supply, or you're in a big hurry, you can just set up a regular desktop size power supply and just plug it in and go to town. The motherboard, yes, it has remote management. Yes, it is standard ITX, but you've even got one standard half-height expansion slot. So you can add a 10 gig NIC to this, or a 25 or 100 gig NIC to this, whatever you want to run. Even the power cables to the drive bays, standard Molex. And you get plenty of extra Molex SATA style and the older Molex style power connectors. The motherboard has one onboard M.2, and you've got two 2.5-inch bays, one here at the side and one here at the top if you're not going to use the top for your CD-ROM. So yeah, this is set up to be, kind of an ultimate home server. It's not going to be super loud, but it's also a reasonable small business server. I mean, if you're rocking a small business and you've got Office 365 in the cloud and you've got all of your other stuff, you might not need much in the way of an in-office server. You might just need a place to store your files and to pull down backups from the cloud just in case something happens with Office 365, because if you didn't read your terms of service very carefully in your Office 365, you're responsible for your own backups. Yeah, you want to put Windows Server on this? It's qualified. You want to put Linux on this? Well, of course that's going to work. The motherboard is the Supermicro X11 SCL-IF. Again, in this baseline configuration, it comes with a single 16 gigabyte DIMM. It has 2 full-size DDR4 memory slots, that is unregistered error-correcting memory that you'll want to be able to use with this. 64 gigabytes is how much you can put in this thing maximum. Now this motherboard, if you're not familiar with it, it's like 1151. So this is going to be Xeon E series, like 2100, 2200. It is socketed, so it's upgradable. That's nice. It's designed for DDR4 2666, as I mentioned, maximum capacity 64 gigabytes. The M.2 interface is PCIe 3.0 by 4. That is a 2280 slot as well. That PCIe slot, it's a full 16-lane expansion slot. So if you want to put something fancy in there, you can. Just remember half height, half length. Oh, and remember we're also working with a 385 watt power supply, so don't push it too much. Now, other than the Xeon, it is possible to put i3 and Celeron lower-end processors into this platform. Of course, the features that you get, the features that it'll toggle on and off, will vary a little bit because Intel, they sort of do things like that. Like an i3, you can get error-correcting memory most of the time. But if you put something higher into that, then it's not going to do that because Intel has got the market pretty segmented. But it will do error correcting memory and it will do Xeons. So my choice would be to just put a Xeon in there and not play games with any of the other lower end processors. If you're going to go for a platform like this, I mean, the motherboard alone, if you just buy the motherboard, it's over $250. You might as well go for a higher end CPU. 6-core maximum for this platform, which again, for a file server and something relatively modest, completely okay. For a home server, that's really, really, really awesome. You can run Home Assistant and a ton of virtual machines on this thing. 16 gigabytes out of the box. I mean, think about your standard issue $1,000 plus NAS. They're going to come with about 4 gigabytes of memory. 16 gigabytes of memory on this platform, and you can run whatever you want. Windows Server, Linux, whatever. All right, before I boot this up on the VGA console, we'll see how loud it is. Now, pro tip, don't run this for a long time without the cover on it because the CPU does not have a fan. The case design is such that for the front here, the vent here at the bottom is a duct. It's going to bring air in through the bottom, and that duct will sort of go over the CPU, and then it exhausts the warm air out the back. So that's bringing a lot of air in from the front through the mesh front here, and then that's going to pull it over the CPU and exhaust it out the back. Now this is doing the first boot, so the fan is kind of ramping a little bit, but even if this were sitting on your desktop, it's not obnoxiously loud. Let's do an initial software configuration. Let's do an initial software configuration and then see what we're working with in terms of the BIOS and other features. Now for the operating system, I've decided to go with TrueNAS Scale because out of the box, there's nothing here and you can sort of put whatever you want on it. You could use it as a Linux workstation if you wanted with VGA, install Manjaro, Red Hat, CentOS, whatever you need to do. It was really a tough choice between Red Hat because now you can get free licenses for Red Hat up to 16 servers, but TrueNAS Scale is hard to compete with. Now IX Systems says that TrueNAS Scale is still kind of beta. TrueNAS Core being based on FreeBSD, being a little bit more mature, that's certainly an option here. But Scale, Linux is always going to be near and dear to my heart, and TrueNAS Scale will let me do some things with this that is a little bit more difficult to do on TrueNAS Core with the whole home server, deploying Linux packages, maybe coloring outside the lines a little bit with the platform. If you decide TrueNAS Scale is what you want to do, installation couldn't be easier. You just got to go to the TrueNAS website, download the USB memory stick image, and etch that to a USB stick. You got 2 USB 3.0 ports on the front of this thing. You can just plug in your USB stick there, boot off of it, it'll find your attached hard drives and walk you through the setup. You can get it done in an afternoon, no problem. But the platform here for what we're starting with, TrueNAS Scale. With that, I can deploy Docker images. Plex server is no problem. MB Media server, Calibre book server. I can deploy all of that with just a few mouse clicks. I'm ready to go. Home Assistant. I want to run Home Assistant for all of my home automation. You can check out our entire series on home automation. I took a 100-year-old thermostat. It was a dual zone. It was like a day-night thermostat that was designed to automate a coal loader into a coal-fired boiler. And I've got that hooked up to Home Assistant, controlling a modern natural gas heat pump system, where it's natural gas for heat and a heat pump for air conditioning. And it works great. It's awesome. It's awesome having the original 100-year-old thermostat in my house control all of the modern AC. Even the mini splits upstairs, it sort of gives it a hint as to what the mini splits should be doing. And all that's controlled through Home Assistant, and all that's controlled through the system with that setup. So I could run that on this, no problem. And because it's TrueNAS, I've got ZFS. I can use ZFS Send and manage all my data sets with that. There's really a lot of level 1 videos that you can sort of dovetail with this one, and it'll slot right in. And this is just the hardware platform to run it. Now, if you're not comfortable with all this, and you just want to run Windows, you can, because it's a PC. That's something that even the very expensive NASs don't really do all that well. This one does, so that's pretty cool. I've also set it up with, it's got a 2 terabyte hard drive. That's fine. I've upgraded that to 6 terabyte drives, and I'm setting up a mirror with that. It's going to work pretty well as a mirror. I could also add some more drives, some more 2.5-inch drives. There's cabling would be weird because of the whole, there's 4 SATA ports on this and the connections, M.2. You start to really, augment the base platform. Out of the box, you don't have the connections to use 2.5-inch drives for SSDs, or at least the 2.5-inch bays that exist internally. You can use the drive bays. You can use your 3.5-inch drive bays and put 2.5-inch SSDs in there. That's no problem. I mean, you could outfit this thing with 4 SSDs if you really wanted to. 4 terabyte, 2.5-inch SSDs. It's gonna waste a fair bit of space that you've got for 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives, but hey, that's fine. You do you. Always turbo, yeah! But this is really just one way you could go with it. What do you want to see? Let's build something together. I really want to do a couple more projects with this platform. I'm looking for ideas. What would you like to see? What would you use? Probably be pretty awesome. So there you go. This little guy's available at Micro Center. Like I said, Micro Center sent this over so I could check it out because they know that I'm into this kind of stuff and it's pretty exciting. Oh, and I almost forgot. Micro Center still has their free 240 gig SSD giveaway going on. There's a link for that in the description if you want to check that out. Now, if this isn't high-end enough for you and you want to build something else in the workstation or server or workstation category, be sure to check out those Micro Center links because they'll help you build it. And they'll make sure that you're building something that's not overkill, but also right-sized for the particular problem you're trying to solve. I love this platform for a really competent home server. If you want to go absolutely crazy, you totally can. There are still DIY options out there. Like, this is actually turning into kind of a hot market. There's all new case designs and all new really exciting stuff that are around, ITX as a form factor and platform for really powerful small business and home server, like for pros, sort of a setup. And it really is super awesome having a home server to do, your laptop backups and provide a captive portal for people that are visiting your house and a media server, and you don't have to subscribe to Spotify. We've done some videos on doing self-hosting with Spotify and a VPN server back to your house. You really don't need an amazing internet connection to stream your own music from your house. This can do all of that at the same time as it's doing everything else. It's even with 6 cores, that's pretty overkill for something like that. It's relatively low power, it's relatively quiet. It's a good platform to begin to build to do those kind of things. So if you want to see me do a project with this, comment below, let me know what you're excited to see. Or if you're thinking, hey, what would be really handy is if I had X. Let's see if we can't build X. Join me in the forums at Level 1. I'm Wendell, I'm signing out, and I'll see you there.